mistakes that people make when they are doing the presentation element of public speaking. So hopefully we've all got note-taking devices available. Let's jump in. Now I'm calling this section today Presentation Mistakes Part 1. And that's because there are quite a few. So in part 1, our first presentation mistake that we often make, and I have made so many times myself on stage, when we go into a space when we have to do the presentation of our talk, the first and most common mistake that I see myself and in other people is the speaking really, really, really fast so that you want to get it all over and done with and hopefully get out of there before anybody notices that you're even there. Speaking too fast. Mistake number 1 of presentation. When we're nervous, things happen to our body. Our adrenaline surges throughout our entire nervous system. Our heart rate goes like 100 miles an hour. And as a result, when we open our mouths and start to talk, our words often try and keep up with all those physiological changes, which makes it very difficult for our audience, because when we rush through our talk, the people who are listening to us really struggle to follow what we're saying. And unfortunately, what that does is makes us feel, or makes us appear, really unconfident. So if a speaker starts talking really, really quickly, particularly at the beginning of the talk, it can really disconnect us from our audience. So I like to think of it like you're going on this beautiful scenic drive through a beautiful countryside, and there's lovely things to look at in all directions. But you're in a car that's going 100 kilometers an hour. So we're missing all of those details along the way. When we speak too fast, particularly at the beginning of our talk or even all the way through our talk, what happens is our audience gets lost. And that's really the bottom line, and that's why it's a mistake. If you're somebody who speaks naturally quite quickly, that's okay, as long as you insert pauses to help your audience catch up. So the thing is, when we really slow that delivery process down, it helps our message to really land with the audience. And the audience can actually listen to what we're saying and connect with it. So how do we fix the talking too fast thing? Basically, deliberate pauses. See what I did just then? When we take a short breath between sentences, a little less obvious than that though, or we do a 1-2 count at the end of each comma, that works really well. So if you are somebody who speaks really quickly, naturally in a normal situation, you'll probably find that when that adrenaline kicks in, you're going to start speaking really quickly when you're presenting as well. Even if you're not somebody who would naturally speak really quickly, if you are aware that you do speak really quickly when you're doing a presentation, pause deliberately. Take a breath. And anytime there would normally be a comma, if it was in a written form, in your head go, and then keep going. That gives us control of the pace that we're delivering at, and more importantly, it gives our audience some space to really think about what we've said and to hear us. So that is tip number 1. Pop a 1 in the chat if you have done that mistake before, and I'm the first one to put my hands up. Mistake number 2, speaking in a monotone and using the voice that the science teacher used to use on a Friday afternoon in double science. The good old monotone. The thing is, our voice is an instrument, but when we only use that one note, people tune out. And that's because a monotone voice is like a song that we hear, but the song's only got one note in it. It doesn't matter how good the lyrics are, nobody wants to keep listening to a song that's only got played at one note. So vocal variety really adds that melody and that rhythm to our messages. So let's do a little example here. I'm so excited to be here today. It's going to be so much fun. Are we believing me? No, I can see all those heads going, no. What about, I am so excited to be here today. It is going to be so much fun. Same words, different vocal variety. That's where the melody and the rhythm comes in. It really helps people to feel our words, not just hear them, if we change the pace and the tone. So how do we fix the good old monologue monotone that we hear a lot? This is a really clever trick. Pick up a children's storybook and read the stories out loud. There's something that happens in our head when we read children's stories. When we read children's stories, we use much more vocal variety than we would probably do in a normal situation because we want our kids to be engaged and listening and attentive. Use that as a practice exercise. That's a really good place to start. The second thing is when we're using our own talks, when we're presenting for our own talks, practice emphasizing the really emotional words. And what I find works really well for me, when I've written out my talk as part of the preparation phase, I'll actually underline the words that are really important to emphasize. And they're usually the emotional words. This kind of helps me to overcome that monotone and it builds natural energy. So that is mistake number 2. Put a 2 in the chat if you have made that mistake before. Where's my chats gone? We've got a few 2s coming in here. We've got some 1s. We've got Victoria, Janelle, all sorts of people coming in with the 1s. In fact, Nicole's got 1 at about seven 1s in a row, so I take it that's a biggie for Nicole. Hey, Jodie, great to see you. Okay, so we've got a lot of people who've done the 1, and we've got a lot of people who've done the 2s as well. Excellent. All right, so that is our second mistake. Let's jump into our third mistake. Number 3 is filler words. You know, those words like and like and you know and yeah and uh-huh, those kinds of filler words. Now, we all do filler words when we're thinking or unsure. But fillers like and you know, do you know what they do? They create this clutter in our message. So when we're presenting, what actually happens is it's like static on a radio. You can't really hear the song because that background noise is making it hard to hear. Or it's like standing in front of a bathroom mirror and you can't see your reflection because the mirror's all foggy. And I've worked with people who have used lots of variations of filler words, and I've used them myself. And one of the training sessions, training programs that I've done was with the Australian Institute of Management, where they recorded me and I said the word okay 47 times in a 3-minute presentation. Do you know how hard I had to work to do that? Not hard at all. It was very hard to listen to. So making sure that those filler words are reduced as much as possible is a great way to clear that clutter away and make your audience much more engaged. So how do we do it? It's a really simple fix, and I wish I had learned this many years ago because I was still struggling with this particular mistake up until about 7 years ago. But the easiest way to overcome frequent use of a filler word is to actually replace that filler word with silence. Because a filler word is either a habit, which we need to break by replacing it with another habit, or it's space where you're mentally thinking, oh, what do I have to say next? What am I up to? What did they ask me? And it's really just you creating a space to think, because we as speakers don't want to have silence on stage or in our presentation. But this is the thing that I have learnt. Silence is a really, really powerful speaking tool. In fact, when we use silence effectively, it draws our audience in because they start to wonder what's going to come next instead of counting how many times you say okay or yeah, or like, or you know in a presentation. So those are some filler words and some fixes for filler words. But just to make sure that we really understand the impact of filler words, I'm going to give you an example. I think this is a good point about filler words, right? And maybe it's, I don't know, is it like time to maybe move forward now? It's painful to listen to, right? As opposed to, I think this is a good point about filler words, and we should move forward now. You hear the difference? Awesome. So filler words are something that can be replaced by silence. So give me a 3 in the chat, ladies and gentlemen, there, if you have ever used filler words and you think you might have used them too often. Oh, there are multiple 3s coming through there. We've got batches of 3s. In fact, I'd go so far as to say we have a filler of 3s happening in the chat. Excellent. Okay, so just remember to replace those filler words with a pause, and that will solve that problem for you and make you actually appear more interesting to your audience. All right, mistake number 4, our last mistake for the day today. If you are using a slideshow in a presentation, the mistake I'm referring to here is looking at the slides and reading every word off the slide directly to your audience. Or, and I actually saw this at an event where I was doing a keynote presentation about 2 months ago. I saw one of the speakers stand on stage and actually read off the slides and not look at the audience at all. So for the entire time, they were actually reading off the slides. Complete disconnect from the audience. When we read every word on a slide, we don't create that connection with our audience. And in fact, you know what happens? The audience stops looking at us and starts reading the slides along with you. Reading slides is a lot like having a conversation with someone while they're texting somebody else. And we know when we're having a conversation with someone and they're on their phone that they're not really paying attention to us, right? We've all been there. Yeah, we've all been there. Now, our audience doesn't just want the information that we're sharing with them, they actually want to feel a sense of connection, because if you can connect with your audience, then you make your audience experience much more interesting. And people want to be entertained and engaged. They don't want to be bored. When we look at our audience, we show to the audience that they matter much more than our notes matter. So how do we fix this problem? Couple of ways that we can do to fix this problem. First thing is use your slides as prompts. Now I do a whole training session on how to create powerful slides. And the thing that I adjust first is how much content is on a slide. So you really want to have just a keyword or two, ideally on a slide. Even better is to have an image on a slide that represents that keyword. And if you do need to have more text, make sure it's bullet points with as few words as possible, because it's about connecting with people, not reading to them. Ultimately, if all we're doing in a presentation is reading the slides, an email would do the same job, right? Because the value of us standing and presenting to people is how we deliver the content. Not just what we say, but how we deliver it. So those are my 4 common public speaking presentation mistakes in part 1 of common public speaking mistakes that I'm going to share with you over the next few weeks.